Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Low Code Campfire. This is episode number 83 for February 3rd of 2023. Today is going to be an Open Lines Friday. We'll get into what that means in a minute. Let me introduce myself. I am Dale Warner, Head of Support for Plantin' App. This is an event we hold every Friday this hour to talk about low code, the experiences that we have, and Plantin' App in specific. So we hope that you'll bring something to share, something or a challenge or an experience that you had. And again, this is an all skill levels kind of event. All of our past editions are recorded and put on our YouTube channel. So that's youtube.com/PlantinApp. And we invite you to subscribe to that channel. In our agenda today, we'll say hello and introduce yourself to the group if you're new. Otherwise, we will go around the campfire. First call, anything that you have important first that you want to share. We'll talk at some point about contributions to the Campfire website, feature requests, any submitted topics, and if we get to it, ghost stories and dark corners. After an hour or so, we'll stop the recording and enjoy a virtual adult beverage in our Afterglow segment. We'll just hang out for 10-15 minutes and just chat, but do engage with us. Jump in, do show and tell, do use the chat window. Just get in and let's have a conversation. We do hope that you'll be nice to the other participants and that you will mute if you have noise going on in the background. You can submit questions and topics in advance using that QR code or the links that you'll find in the emails that we send to you. And with that, good morning, everyone. See, it's a friendly faces group today.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Are there unfriendly faces in the group?
Let's just say they're all known.
That's why I hide mine. You know, I didn't want anybody thinking I was unfriendly.
None of them are unfriendly. Great. Anyone with something that you want to bring to the front today? We did have a submitted topic, which we'll get to, but let's talk about other things. First up, Jim Everett. You mentioned in the Low Code Cafe this week that, did you mention it in the cafe? I don't remember. No, in another event, but we have the knowledge base project that we're working on, and it is open and accessible. We're not really ready to release it as a big announcement yet, but as a small announcement to this group, it's there. It's functional, and we would solicit some feedback. Part of what we're still working on getting all the content into it, and that's kind of an ongoing project, but it's at least there enough to talk about now. So this is, let me drop the URL in the chat. When we click into that, this is what you'll see. It's the knowledge base preview. Notice that there's lots of words, and that Jim Everett is behind this project. If you have any feedback, you can use the feedback form button to get into it. But the idea here is that you can use a search term and search for things. You can filter it down by particular audiences or topics. So hopefully it'll get you to the spot where you can get to what you need faster. We're linking in our documentation, our videos, special articles. Jim, do you want to say anything about any of that?
Yeah, if there are a lot of words, it's my fault at the top. So yeah, it's a small subset at the moment, but what we're hoping is that people will have a chance to play around with it, see how it's currently working, and any comments, suggestions, thoughts are very welcome. At the moment, what you're getting is, although it's searching the description of the video and the body of the documentation to make the search work, it doesn't show you that content here. You have to jump away from that. That's partly because although Search Boost is able to select out the relevant chunks of a page or a piece of HTML, because this is using database queries, there anytime we try and bring back content, it would either bring back everything with no indication of where the hit is, or it would bring back the first 500 characters or whatever. But whatever your search was, it will always be the first part of the description. So that's the explanation for why we're using this approach, where you really just see the title of the item and click through. So as it says on the blurb at the top, we're soliciting feedback over the next couple of weeks. So if you have a chance to have a look at it and share some feedback, that would be great. Maybe next week we can have a quick chat to see at the next campfire. Well, no, are we doing campfire next week?
Yes, we're still on.
Yeah. Okay. So at the next campfire, we could maybe set aside a little time to discuss how people have got on. But if anyone wants to contact me directly, I'd be more than happy to have a chat.
So just kind of looking at the functionality, we've and you can tell that that I wasn't involved in the user interface because it's well, fancy. I've got starting my reputation as being all black and white. So anyway, we've got cards. We show where it came from, what kind of content it is. So this, for example, is a video. We can see the audience information and the topics information. And those things are all active. So for example, if we want to see how it appears in the documentation, we can click into views and it'll show you this, show you the related article that it came up with. That opens in a new tab so you can get to it and then get back easily. But if you want to focus in, for example, there's in searching for workflows related to APIs, you can click that and it'll filter further. So we're narrowed down to 4 things, and then we see some videos and some documentation where that came in to pass. So hopefully, I mean, this is what we're trying to learn, right? Is this a useful way to get to information? We want to make it, and we're going to continue to make it useful to get there. Cool. Questions, comments?
Yeah, I do. I think this is awesome. I'm really thankful to have this, Jim and Dale and everyone. I know I was searching for some stuff just this past week, and I would have appreciated having this, so I will appreciate it in the future. I wonder if maybe you want to take us through a sample search.
Sure.
So we can see how it works.
Well, so let's try that. Let's clear the filters. And do you have a search that you'd like to try, or shall I just pick one?
I was this week looking for information, or hopefully in my case, I was looking for one of your low-code videos on how to add columns to a list. Like you create a list with SQL, and I wanted to add a column to it. So I was looking for any information about manipulating lists, not listings.
Yep.
It
so
doesn't have to be my example. So
yeah, sure. So I think we're seeing. I don't see anything talking about lists here in the.
part of the issue is that in terms of documentation, only a small part of the whole of the documentation has been tagged yet, and only the last few months of the videos have been tagged. So if it's a topic related to something fairly recent, that's your best bet.
Okay, so you're saying that the whole knowledge base is not entered yet. What about how extensive is it searching through the videos that are available on YouTube?
What it's searching, the description is all it's searching at the moment. So what as what Dale just popped up just now and expanded out the description, where you've got the time, the times and the topics. That's the body of text that it's searching. As well as we've gone through, the reason it's taking a while is we've gone through and then applied these different categories. So we've indicated whether it's targeted at low coders or pro coders, and we've tried to pick out which topics it's most relevant to. So it's searching across the text, but also the categories.
So in a previous, I think it was a cafe that Jim did, he showed how he retrieved data off of YouTube and grabbed all this information. And that was the purpose, to get it into our knowledge base. But we're still in the process of turning those on. So we have it in the knowledge base, and where there's a curation project that's going on to get it into the knowledge base. So this is more about the form of the knowledge base than the content of it as yet.
Well, I certainly applaud the effort. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good. So yeah, we'd be interested to see your feedback on that. And then just while we're chatting about it, and I've mentioned, I think, this in several different ways, but we have a gentleman on staff who's dedicated to documentation. That's his full-time job. And so we're seeing more and more our documentation come up to date. We've, for any of you that's been with us for a long time, there's been the docs.dnn sharp documentation, and we're working to incorporate all of that and bring it up to date into our new documentation, which is learn.plantonapp.com documentation. And so week by week, you'll find that the content that's here is more and more. And then so from a pure, I want to read the documentation standpoint, it's getting better. And then this will feed the knowledge base as well. So it's just an ongoing project. I'll put that, if you don't have it. I think that's linked off of lots of the things that we provide, but I'll put that in here as well in the chat. Good. Okay. Now it's not first call anymore, but somebody's got to have something that you wanted to talk about today. Right, I'll go on. Stop me if you have something. We did have a submitted topic in advance that was all things JSON with examples, maybe. And that was anonymous, so I don't know exactly where we're going with that, but I brought out some things that we could talk about with JSON. And kind of pointing you in a direction for JSON. So within YouTube, we've done a lot of different articles, a lot of different things that incorporate JSON at some level. And so just to remind you that there is a search capability. So if you go to our channel, youtube.com/plantanap, and hit this icon here, you can search. And YouTube does a pretty good job of finding anything that JSON was in the description, or I think even out of the dialogue. So this is going to turn up a lot of things. I'm not sure it's going to. I haven't taken the time yet to point you to particular episodes that might be better to talk just about JSON as a whole, but it's a big resource that you might be able to pick out something that's relevant to what your question is, and maybe expand the search. And then we haven't talked about it much lately, but we in this group have a shared website, campfire.plantanap.com, and I will put that on the chat here as well because I'm feeling chatty. This is, if you're unfamiliar with it, it's a place where anyone in this group can contribute or look at contributions of low code. And so we have a number of articles out here that have been published that deal directly with JSON, and I'll just kind of dig into those. Wrong button. So I'm looking for contributions. The contributions is a nice listing of what was added and who added it, and maybe some comments. And so if we go in here and search for JSON, there's 3 that pop to the top, and all of these are probably useful to take a look at. The first one, for example, Jim is bragging on the knowledge base. Take a look at knowledge base for JSON. Yep, 13 hits. Okay, so I forgot, I trailed off on my thought here, which is anybody who wants to participate in this group can get access to Campfire website. And so you feel free, if you're not part of this, to give me your email address and I will invite you to be part of it. Once you're part of it, you can go in, you'll be able to log in and open up the contributions and see how something is built. And that's something that we're going to do some today. So, for example, one of the contributions is to talk about, hey, what's inside of a list? If you run a SQL, generate a list from SQL type of an action, and you're trying to figure out what's inside that list, this is a way to do it, and it uses JSON to do it. So behind the scenes, we can look at the code here in a minute. It's pretty straightforward, but there's this display the user's entity button, and it comes out with a bunch of JSON. So and we can put that into a nice viewer like Code Beautify, and it'll show in a nice structured way what's inside this JSON. And so we're seeing, in this case, the list contained things like user ID, first name, created date, last name, and there's a nice array of these it's an array of users. So that's a way of seeing what's in there and using JSON. And just to kind of demonstrate, if you have access into this Campfire website, you can go in and take a look at the code behind. So there's this button that says display the user's entity, and the actions behind that are that it creates a list from SQL. So we're getting this content from the users table. I often use the users table as an example because it's on every system. We're putting it into something called users entity, or this could be think of as users list. We changed our naming scheme here a little while back from entities to list. So anyway, that's the list. We use create JSON object and created something called users entity from it, formatted as a list. And then it went to a field called users, which, if we go all the way to the top again, we have let's see, did I do that? We have users JSON that gets created. Where is that happening? Yeah, it's putting it into users JSON as the output token. So point is, you can kind of follow along and see how it's retrieving that JSON and creating it and putting it into the form. So you get the form and the code as well.
Dale?
Yes, sir.
So I own up to the fact that that was my question. I did not mean it to be anonymous. I didn't realize it when I put it in. I apologize.
Oh, we take all anonymous, but thank you.
So a question is, if you see the JSON properties on this item here, you can see the name, the value, the type format. What I was referring to, and maybe you're not prepared to go into that right now, which I understand. What I was referring to is, what is it? What's the definitions of those choices? What is the impact? What's in them? You know, what's the kind of the process behind it? That's what I mean by all things.
I'm gonna. Can you frame that question again?
Sure. If you look at what appears to be the create JSON object, you scroll down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you can see the name, the value, the type formatter.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, a deeper dive into what those things, those parameters are. Specifically, you know, the type formatter, and then how they can you use them in kind of a sequence. What do you do when you go from step A to step B? That sort of thing. Like, how did that all work? I mean, I've used it. Yeah, there you go. So what is that, and when do you use those? What's the use cases for, say, the different types of type formatters? And again, you may not be prepared to do that, which I completely understand, but that's kind of where I was going with my question.
Perfect. So it's great that we narrow down into it. I don't think I have an answer to the question directly. It's kind of a bit, I think it would be a research project for me, both to see if we have documentation in the area and then a little trial and error, but I'd be happy to take it on. If anyone has any direct experience with that, that'd be, we would welcome the comments here from the group. Cool. So I just kind of, again, I'll take it on if Patrick, if you'll make a note for me, that would be terrific.
I guess you were talking about documentation earlier. Maybe the first place to start is, do you know if the documentation's been updated?
And I'm almost certain that it has not yet. We're starting. I don't believe that Angel has been doing much in the area of documenting actions. This is an action and a complex one, so I don't think that I have that yet. So it would be a question of looking in the older documentation and seeing if it was done in any level at this point. And it would probably be, you know, I don't mind taking a look and seeing if it's there. This would be create JSON object. Yeah. So yeah, it'd be a research project. So let me do that offline, and I'll have a better answer either directly or part of this group. But go ahead,
Matt. Is your main concern is, for example, when do you choose an object versus an array, or when you choose a JSON object versus an entity object? Is that the sort of question you're looking for answers to?
Yes, both from a definition standpoint, what does this mean? And also an application standpoint. Now that you know what it means, here's how you might use it.
Yeah.
Like the entity list, I use that frequently. And in SQL directly, I'm creating lots and lots of JSON. But part of what I'm thinking is, am I at least with SQL, am I reinventing a wheel that I don't need to reinvent? Is my question. Part of my question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you're using the SQL to generate the JSON.
Right. In different applications, like lists like this, create list from SQL. That's there's enough use cases out there to show you, okay, here's how you do it. I do that all the time. I also have gone directly in SQL and said, okay, just display JSON, display as JSON, whatever that's the string name is there. That's fine. But are there other useful tools in this type format or list that I'm just simply missing that not just me, but we can or should be aware of, and how to use them effectively?
So you're taking the unreasonable approach of wanting documentation for the features that are in the product.
It's my weakness, Dale. I look for the unreasonable. I apologize.
I suppose, to be fair, it's only the entity list and entity object that aren't part of the JSON specification, because you can, the string, number, and boolean are already part, and then objects and arrays are part of the JSON.
Yeah, but knowing what it does, I can't tell
yeah.
you what it does. So it would be a trial and error thing a little bit to reveal it. Or I may throw this as a challenge, or one of the developers may have more exposure and know exactly what these things do, or Radu and his team at the delivery level, and so if they we will find answers to this, and then it will find its way into the documentation. So let's just take it on as a challenge.
Oh, thank you.
For people that are, following along on, just kind of as a more of the general answer to the question, I wanted to point out some of these other, so we got right to the question that you were trying to ask, Matt, but I wanted to point out that there's some other great examples of, in this case, it's consuming JSON, right? That this one deals with JSON in that it does a server request to pull out search results that come back as JSON. And so it's just kind of a neat way to use JSON. This one shows the ways to manipulate JSON, or being able to produce particular JSON. So there's some examples here that are worth doing. And then I've got another example, and this is, I think, kind of a common use case, and anybody that's diving in trying to figure out JSON for the first time, it's like, okay, you're talking to some other server, some other foreign server that's producing JSON in a particular format, and now what do I do with it? Because I want to pull out the pieces that I need. How do I pull out the pieces that I need and get to them reliably? And this thing is an array, so how do I iterate through the array and things like that? So this is kind of a good example of this. I happen to have my address up on the screen, so just in case you need to send money my way. But when you, for example, Google is a common use case, and it returns, this is the thing that you get, but you want to parse it out into its individual components so that you can do something with it. And so again, when you first start working with that source, you work working with a new source, and the typical thing to do is, okay, I'm going to make a call. I got a response. Now I got a response. What do I do with it? So use something. I mean, for me, it's always trying to see it in a structured way. So I jump right to a JSON viewer of some sort and then see what's in here. And then now that I see what's in here, how can I pull things out of it and get what I need? And so something like the code that's behind this one, these parsing things, is useful to understand how to get down into the levels of JSON. Once you understand the techniques, then it's a little bit of a trial and error to get the code just right so that you can get the thing. And then there's many options. There's kind of the low code way through our actions. If you know some JavaScript, then there's JavaScript libraries that you can use to get into that. And we've shown examples of that. I'll bet we could even find that on YouTube. So there's a lot of different ways to manipulate it, whether it just kind of depends on your area of comfort. We had a question here recently about merging a couple of JSON, merging different JSON together. And again, that was kind of one that I pointed towards. I'll bet you'll find the best answer to do using JavaScript, because it's kind of a native, natural capability that's in the language to do that, or certainly a lot of documented examples. So it just depends on the problem that you're trying to do. But Matt will take on trying to find trying to define what our low code actions are. So good one. Okay. I'm going to stop talking a minute and see if anybody else has one that you want to bring up before I dive into yet another of my prepared topics. Okay, you guys are quiet. I'm going to, on Campfire, we haven't gone down into contributions lately. I think there's a couple of things that would have been added. Jim, I don't think we've talked about this one that you contributed. Image on card, not on grid.
Yeah, that goes back to something that Mark raised a while back, and by the time I got around to it, he'd already figured out the answer himself. So it's not anything particularly complicated, but it was just demonstrated by using the correct settings for the two listings. You can get the image to show on the card, but not pollute the listing. That has two instances of the listing, but if you swap it from the card view to the list view on the bottom one, it should show that the URL disappears. But if you go back to the cards, then the URL's there and pulls down the image.
Yeah.
So I think lower down there's a narrative on how that works.
Good. All right.
Yeah, thanks, Jim, for jumping in on that. I appreciate that.
I just wish I'd been a bit quicker to say to catch you before you've found out the answers elsewhere.
What you did definitely helped. Thank you.
And I'm not sure we talked, I don't think we brought up this one. I don't think we've gone through contributions lately. So this is a listing switch. We're, there's a little bit of history here. As a feature, our Bootstrap 3 automatically allowed you to change between, depending on the size of your screen, it would change to a card view versus a listing view, depending on the size of the screen. And when we went to Bootstrap 5, it's not part of the settings. And now, I mean, that's a feature request. It's likely to happen. But in the meantime, Anthony's provided an answer to cover this. That I think if we were to narrow this out, it's going to pop to a card view at some point. And so he just details how he makes that happen and in different sizes. So again, that's available as a contribution. We haven't looked at feature requests for a while. Does anyone have anything that they're particularly passionate about and want to lobby for votes today? Or dig in and take a look at?
Yeah, I put a couple up there. So inside of page management, when you're moving a page around, rather than having to move above, below, so on and so forth, or under, what you do is just, or are able to do, is just drag it to where you need it to be and drop it, and that reorders your pages. So if you have a lengthy submenu and you want to move something, you add a new page, it goes to the bottom. And you'd like it to be in the middle or somewhere else, you just got to keep moving it once, moving it twice, moving it a third time, as opposed to just simply grabbing a handle and dragging it to where you want it to be displayed.
So we're talking about here in our pages menu.
Yep.
That we have.
Yep. Move up, move down.
And this is have you used
Yes.
this one? Okay.
But see, you've got 22 under tests. Click on tests, please. Yep. And so how do you get that support center 2021-07-18, the last one, to be right there, halfway up? Instead of, you've got the visibility icon on the left, have the drag handle on the left to just simply drag it and go.
I think that would be a great enhancement. We thanks to Jerry Maddox, we have nice examples of how to do drag and drop. It's not that complex. Of course, then the next thing is there's the work. First is there's getting it right in this list, and then second is changing the data structure underneath. But apparently we know how to do that.
I think dragging and dropping would be definitely easier, but I just want to make sure that it's understood that it can be done in this interface here.
Okay, I'm listening.
Yeah. So yeah, if you click on the move option, yep, and then choose the below radio button, and then say we wanted to move it below the support center 2021-11-12, then
so yeah, you've got to
you got to navigate to it. Yeah, it's kind of like it would be
This
Can
interface
you
looks
search
like
for it?
you can search for it also, but yeah, you could just but that's kind of it would be a lot easier if you could just drag it, definitely.
Yeah.
So if we wanted to do it 2021-11. Yeah.
The first time I did that, the way you're describing it, I was like, okay, what the heck happened to my page? Where'd it go?
Yeah. So there is drag and drop would be very intuitive.
Yes,
This move,
much so, more so.
just I haven't actually used this feature, so this is great. I'm learning something new. This move would let you move it anywhere within the menu structure, right?
Yeah.
It would no longer have to stay within. So like if we added a drag and drop feature, it would be within the current menu.
Right, within that under the test page, drag and drop, not necessarily drag and drop it out of tests into some other level.
Yep. Yep. So that would be, I'm just thinking it's not move up, move down. There's nothing wrong with that. Move has a completely different functionality that lets you, that's needed. So it would not be a replacement to any of those, but rather an enhancement.
Yep.
Nice. Okay. If so there's an opportunity to vote for that one.
So then, I'm sorry, I need to.
Yeah. Good.
I get the next one up too. Inside of a role in DNN, if you go to DNN roles, you can click on an icon that says, okay, here's everybody in that role. So similarly, inside of the roles, roles. Yep. So essentially an icon to say right now, I've got, let's say, a column that it would indicate you've got, 10 people in this role, and a button to pop out a listing of.
Sure. So you can make sure you have the right people in the right roles, or audit a role. Yep.
Exactly. Like why is that person in that role? They shouldn't be,
I'd say, and that this page is on our list of things that deserves improvements, and it would be a complete rebuild of it, similar to what we did with users and pages in the recent past. So I think that would probably be something that would come in at that point.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
Yeah. Do we? So just part of what Patrick is saying is that this was built as part of our core product using Pro code. Sticking with our nomenclature, Pro code, meaning it's somebody opened up C# and did it, versus this could now very well be done with listings and forms and low code. And so that's where we would go to when we rewrite this, it would be done in low code, and then that just kind of helps to reduce the footprint of our core product, and brings in the ability to add those kind of buttons, which would be very nice. How many people are in this role, and do we happen to know if there's a DevOps for that yet, Patrick?
I think so, but if not, we should definitely make sure it's there. But it's definitely been, we've talked about it in the product team.
Okay. Good. So, but I agree with you. This is we're going to have to do this in order to. Our overall direction has been to pull these features into our product instead of relying on the platform. Was there anything else we touched on besides? In the DNN functionality, if we look at roles, and who's in a role, you can remove people from the role and add people to the role directly in that functionality too. So that would be, rather than having to go to the user and add them, it'd be nice to be able to add them directly in that as well. Good. Have we talked about the context menu one?
I was just gonna say, hey guys, vote that one up.
This looks very cool to me. Right, so the idea is like we have this users thing, but we have to have lots of buttons. If you could right click and have your buttons appear there, that would be it would save the real estate and allow you to have lots of buttons. What does that do for mobile? You probably have to have a separate, like a drop down or something.
Yeah, they should. I think they should collapse. This reminds me of discussion that we were having with Patrick, who's been looking at that the first use, the first use experience. And on the entities page, I think the model is slightly different in that nothing shows until you mouse over it. That's right, isn't it, Patrick?
Yeah, but it's that's just yeah, that's a slightly different case, I think. But yeah, so what he's talking about, Dale, is if you switch to entities here, that you have to mouse over each row before you actually see any buttons, and
so if you've never used it before and come to this page, you have no idea what to do. You can probably take a guess. And I think with it being inconsistent with other listings, it's probably unhelpful. So I think as well as reclaiming real estate on the users list, something here that's also uses whatever we adopt on one listing, which probably ought to adopt it on the other ones, on the other pages, so it's consistent and people can discover what they need to do.
Along that line, and I haven't documented it yet, but I depending on which monitor I'm working on, and I get it's all well and good when everything is nice and wide and they show up wide, but when these icons show up stacked, you can get into a thing where you can't get to something until you come at it from another direction. And so there's, I think,
yeah, as a UX, I can see it looks very cool, but I think there are better models. UX.
It's functional, but could be better. Always.
Can we add a comment to that?
Sure.
Well, it's a couple little things, but I'd like to see the singular name to be wider for the longer entries. I'm not sure if you can hover over a long entry and have it pop up with the full one, but even so, I'd like to be able to do that without hovering.
I don't think you can hover, right?
The hover event is showing the menu.
Yeah, there's a number of cases where I've got similarly named stuff, and the difference is at the end of the name, and there's a lot of white space I'm seeing that could be used if we could claim it.
Well, or we're evidently not afraid of wrapping. We've
Wrapping would be
eliminated time.
okay.
So, yeah, being able to, I think that's a fair point.
And I would add on to that since, well, the name of the object that we're trying to edit is far left, and the buttons that we're trying to use to edit it are far right, I'd like to see the row highlight so that I could follow and make sure I'm on the same row.
Yep. Yep.
I think in other views, you guys got that working. In this one, it's not there.
That's where the right-click context menu would be quite nice, because you could mouse over the bit that is the identifier, right-click and get your menu.
Maybe if we could choose the columns we want, because maybe they're created by, if you're working alone like I do most of the time, I don't really care who created that. So I would remove that kind of thing. I know I'm really needy. High maintenance.
I wasn't thinking that at all, but I really was putting my prejudices on it, right? Because I'm looking at things like the dates and thinking, how often do I actually use these? It is nice to be able to sort, for example, by the date, so you can get your most recent stuff up at the top and be able to get to them very quickly. Lots of things that I think we could do with this screen, but I'm not sure if this one has even been discussed for a low code rewrite. Okay. Patrick, could you capture the idea that we talked about entities and just kind of a couple of the topics so we can get back to that?
Sure.
Okay. Good, but I think the context menu, good suggestion. What's this one, Mark? I haven't looked at this at all yet.
Presume you're reading it. So
Yes.
that was inspired by the way a listing can watch the URL change and jump to life, and I really like that. And I thought a token, if a token could do that, and I have no idea if that's even possible. But I thought then the token could requery instantly on a URL change, and I thought that'd be really valuable.
So, for example, a token could appear in an HTML block.
Yeah, anywhere.
Could look at, and we've already established that I'm not a developer, but I think once the token gets evaluated it's evaluated at the back end and displayed at the front end, and then it's text, right? Whatever it evaluated out to, that's what it is. And so if your URL, you stayed on the same page, your URL changed and the thing wasn't refreshed, I don't know that it would have the opportunity to know that something has changed. It's just text.
Yeah, I can't speak for the developers either, but just speaking as a developer, I think the main difference is that, like you said, a token is evaluated once and returns a value, and then at that point it's just a value, whereas the grid is an object. An object can have a timer, it can have events that fire off of it. A token is not an object. So trying to attach events to it is not going to be possible, because once it's evaluated, it's returned value, and that's what it is at that point. The only way that I could think of doing something like what you were saying, sync with URL, is more along the lines if you did something Ajax wise. where you had something that, every few seconds was refreshing itself. I mean, granted, that's extra calls back and forth unnecessarily, but I think that's the closest you're going to get if you need a token to reset, like in a HTML module.
Well, I'm glad we're thinking about it and talking about it. I know that on more than one occasion, I have put an entire listing on a page just because I wanted it to show some new information when the URL changed. So it would be great if I could have some kind of object that acted like a token. I have no idea how possible that is, but I haven't watched the URL. Hey, it's an idea. That's all it is.
Yeah. Because so tokens are essentially back-end server side. So I wonder if there's a possibility of developing a framework for client-side tokens, which are effectively chunks of JavaScript. So there's a builder for JavaScript events, like you were saying, Ben, with the Ajax, but rather than having people having to write them themselves, so that there's a framework for creating these client-side events through a token builder type of interface, and then they will be injected into the page when the page is rendered and would continue to be active.
Now we're talking.
Well, and this comes up in, I mean, I've seen this in other cases and requests here recently, the idea that in forms, we have our init, pre-init kinds of events, and those create tokens that exist only during the life cycle right before a form renders. As soon as the form is rendered and the user is interacting with it, now it's gone. And so you can't use those tokens in JavaScript in like your on change event or things like that, because they're not continually evaluated. So I'm wondering if the framework that Jim was just talking about would make that possible for them to survive. But
I could see something like that potentially being created in, let's say, action form to, new field type, let's say, that is a URL watcher field type. And then whatever you put inside, that, I guess it would, let's say it looks, for example, similar to the static text box. So you put code in there, but whatever you put in there, anytime the URL is updated, that code will rerun itself.
Mm-hmm.
I could see something like that possible, but I don't see how that would be possible outside of the module. So like outside of action form, outside of action grid, using it in a regular HTML module, I don't see how that's going to happen, because that's completely separate from, the code development.
Well, honestly, Ben, I think you've got a good idea. We can use a form to display a piece of content, and that's it. So if it could live in a form, that would be a big step in the right direction, or maybe even the entire solution. So I think that's a great idea.
I suppose that what I was thinking of is that you'd have these client-side tokens that you'd define, and then you'd stick your square braces and the token name and the parameters, stick it into an HTML module or whatever. But when it renders, what it's in fact doing is injecting that JavaScript function and listener into either the head or the foot or into the body, and it's the sort of thing that you can do with a bit of coding and a bit more sophistication, but it would allow people who are at a low code level to create these sorts of client-side tokens that they could then choose to plug them in. So you could have something that was the JavaScript wrapper is watching changes anywhere, really. You just pass that in as a parameter. That's the idea anyway, but a much bigger development.
So I'll just mention, aside from that there is this ongoing discussion of what we do with tokens going forward, and perhaps converting them from strings, magic strings is really, I guess, the way that, one way to refer to them, right? Bracketed strings, converting them from that to some more advanced object, and then whether that could take on capabilities like we've been talking about should be part of the discussion. Anyway, cool. So I will post that, so at least we capture what some of what we're discussing. But with that, we have reached our hour, and at least you helped me get through a full hour, so thank you for that. You guys start quiet, and it just makes it be a tough Friday for me. I wanted to thank anyone. I reached out to several of you to help with reviews on software reviews. I think with softwarereviews.com. But we did achieve our goal. We got listed there, so thanks for your help in doing that. And if you haven't done it, we would appreciate any additional reviews. It helps us attain exposure to a larger audience and grow our product, which I think is healthy for all of us. In any case, thanks for that help, and thanks for being here this week. We will do another episode of this on next Friday. Do hang around for Afterglow if you have a few minutes. Thanks, everyone.